Okay, we are in Leviticus, and we've always stated that this is kind of the theme, how can God live with a bunch of sinners like us? And the answer was, of course, the tabernacle is worship. It's a sanctuary for God, but also it's the priesthood, the sacrifices, the whole thing involved in the tabernacle and the worship. Today, we're going to start in kind of what's a different section. 8 through 10 is the ordination of the priests. And so we're going to talk about quite a bit of that. It's the fulfillment of the instructions that you'll find in Exodus. Remember we talked about Exodus 28-ish? Yeah. Exodus 28 to Numbers 10 is basically a big chunk of literature centered around the same thing. The tabernacle, the priesthood, the sacrifices, the behavior of the people, what you can eat, what you can't eat, etc. In Exodus 28, you have clothing instructions. And in Exodus 29, you have the ordination ceremony. It's really kind of cool. You read the ordination ceremony in Exodus 29, and you flip over to Exodus or Leviticus chapter 8, and it's like, okay, here we go. This is what the Lord says done. We're going to do it. And so it's kind of interesting. And the priest in his clothing also is very interesting. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Any thoughts, questions, or comments now before we leap from the sacrifices, the ordination of the priest? Remember, again, this is very logical. Here's the tabernacle. Okay, boom, got that. Here's the priests and what they're supposed to dress like. Boom, got that. Here's the sacrifices you priests are going to do. Leviticus 1 through 7. Boom, got it. All right, now that we all got all the stuff in place, all the infrastructure in place, let's ordain these priests. Let's set them aside for God's service. It's kind of cool, isn't it? You didn't know you knew that much about Leviticus, did you? Okay. All right. Here is the priest. These clothes are really, these are important. So let's start at the top, work our way down real quickly. He had a headdress or a turban or a mitre, sometimes you might read. And right on there where it says frontlet, it's sometimes called a diadem or whatever, it says holy to the Lord. Ooh, this was serious business. This is holy to Yahweh here. He has his little breastplate that's held by onyx stones. Sometimes you read lapis lazuli, but most of them I think say onyx. And then a breastplate. A breastplate with 12 stones on it. Each one carved with the name of a tribe. Pretty cool, huh? So whenever Aaron walks into the Holy of Holies, he is presenting and representing the people to Yahweh. Hidden in the breastplate is the Urim and the Thummim. Oh boy, you're excited about that, I can tell. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Then we have a decorative band that goes around, kind of a sash and holds it open. Then an ephod. What is an ephod? If you think apron, you pretty much got it. The ephod, most of the thread and the fabric in the ephod is gold. This guy is dressed up. This is serious business. He has his robe, and then the tassel fringes at the bottom. There's pomegranates and bells, so that he tinkles, basically, when he walks. So that as he walks into the very presence of Yahweh, he makes himself known. This is pretty cool stuff. And I got a guy dressed up here, and I'm so sorry, he looks like the donut guy. He looks like he's cooking your donuts, and he's getting ready. I know he's trying, and this is say down south, bless his heart. But anyway, but that gives you a little bit of an idea. Do we know the absolute representation and meaning of all of these things? No. But I've kind of given you the brief garments of the high priest. Notice in Exodus 28, it says, make your sacred garments for your brother Aaron to give him dignity and honor. Isn't that cool? We want him to represent the people. Okay. I knew you would be interested in this. If you're really into this, you can get a Levi high priest doll for $75 from Evo Toys. But if you really want to up your game, there's this place in Dallas, this Dallas vintage. You can rent a high priest costume. Talking about serious Halloween. You can do this up right, or if you want to celebrate Yom Kippur or whatever in just thought that was interesting. Okay. What? Yeah. Go ahead.
Since Randy's not here.
Oh,
to say something weird.
Please do.
He says some bizarre stuff, right? But we grew up together, so it just kind of, it always, when I see this stuff and getting into all those details, I always think about it, it's amazing how did they come up with this? Where did they find all this? How did they get it together and physically make all these things that are that elaborate,
Are you ready?
What's that?
I know the answer to
Well,
that.
go ahead, I want to hear.
Number one, where'd you get all this stuff? You guys have been slaves for 400 years, so where'd you get all this gold and lapis lazuli and all this stuff? Remember, God said, now when you leave Egypt, you ask your masters for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it said that the Israelites despoiled the Egyptians. They left with loot. I mean, seriously, gold, precious stones, fabric, you name it. And there were some Egyptians who went with them. So that's number one. But how do you have a bunch of slaves who know how to do all this intricate work?
How do you put it together? How do you?
Yeah. So God says, I want you to pick out, and I forget his name now. How could I forget his name? He says, I'm going to put my spirit on these guys. He's already pretty much good with this stuff, but I'm going to put my spirit in these guys so that they will know how to do this. God's spirit guided in the making of these clothes, utensils, ornaments, etc. It's pretty cool. And a great question. I mean, it's like, you guys been working out in the brickyards, how do you know how to do all this stuff? Because he always blessed them with his spirit to do it. And he blessed them with loot from the Egyptians. So, yeah. Cool stuff. All right. Let's go. What are Urim and Thummim? By the way, whenever you see I am on the end of a Hebrew word in the Bible, Old Testament, that's usually plural. Cherubim is the plural of cherub. Seraphim is the plural of seraph. So that cost me about $1,000 to learn that, y'all, so you better be impressed. about one of the few things I remember from my Hebrew class. But, yes, ma'am.
So does that mean that there's more than one? I mean, I always just thought it was one and one.
I'm thinking one and one.
Okay.
But
all right.
Why Urim and Thummim? I don't know. But
we spent a lot of time this week talking about Urim and Thummim. There's no clear answer.
Urim means, you weren't supposed to say that. They used the way. That's like telling the punchline on a joke.
Well,
okay.
We came to some conclusions.
Urim means lights. Thummim means maybe perfections. Not really sure. And so you got the Urim and the Thummim, and it's like, okay, does it mean lights means blessings or yes? Or Thummim mean cursings and no? And so what it looks like is that there were two stones that had Urim and Thummim wrote on them. Once again, you can buy your own Urim and Thummim. Yes, indeed, for $24.95. They are in stock. I thought when I saw this, I could really use those. Karen and I go out to eat.
On Amazon or where?
No, it's from the Bible History Exhibits. Yes.
And, tell me that.
So, this solves a lot of things, if you're driving down the road. What would you like to eat, honey? I don't know. Cracker Barrel or barbecue? Okay. So anyway, Urim and Thummim are mentioned about 7 times in the Old Testament. So let's look at it. He says, I want you to put Urim and Thummim in the breastplate. So breastplate, they need 12 stones, add a little pocket. And so they'll be over Aaron's heart whenever he enters the presence of the Lord, and thus he'll always bear the means for making decisions from the Israelites over his heart before Yahweh. So there's these questions, that you may have about the law or about God's guidance or what he wants to do. And so you ask the question, oh God, what about do we do such and such? You pull in, grab one, rotate them around, I guess, pull it out. Urim, lights. Let's do it. Or you pull out Thummim. Oh, better not do that one. The speculation. Notice it's over his heart, which is kind of intriguing, I thought. I love this. This is fantastic. Okay, 1 Samuel 14. Just to give you a little backdrop, Saul is fighting the Philistines, as usual. He has made an oath, and he says, anybody who eats anything before we whip these Philistines good is going to die. Well, Jonathan, who started the whole brouhaha, hasn't heard it. He dips his staff in some honey and eats it, and he's invigorated. He says his eyes are lightened. And so Saul has pronounced a curse, and Jonathan has broken it, and he's under a curse. And so now God is not happy with the Israelites. So Saul said, pray to God of Israel. Saul has asked Yahweh to bless him, asked Yahweh for an answer. Why do you not answer me, Lord? And so he says, if it's my son Jonathan's fault or my fault, let me know. If the men of Israel are at fault, respond with Thummim. So, Urim for one, Thummim for the other. Is this on? Nope. Okay, come back in. So, Jonathan and Saul were chosen by lot, and the men were cleared. And Saul said, again, notice this word, cast the lot. Cast the lot. We're responding with Urim and Thummim, but we're casting the lot. So maybe we have like dice. All right. And then, of course, Jonathan was taken. That's kind of interesting. In Ezra, and this is also quoted in Nehemiah, they're coming back from the exile. 70 years in exile. They kept pretty good records, pretty good genealogical records. There are some who are claimed to be of the line of the priests. If you're the line of the priests, what do you get to eat? You know that now. Yes, you get to eat the sacrifices. If you're not in the priest, you don't get to eat it. So some of them are saying, hey, we're the order of the priests. And they didn't have good records. And so Ezra and Nehemiah said, you don't eat any of the sacred food until the priest should arise with the Urim and the Thummim. Okay. So the short answer is, what are they? I don't know. It looks like 2 stones or 2 dice or whatever, corresponding roughly to a yes or no or either or answer. You pull one out, there's one thing, the other out, there's another thing. They're placed inside the breastplate, where the priest could draw them over his heart, by the way. I'm glad I could solve Urim and Thummim for you. Any thoughts, comments? Let's move on. We're moving now to the ordination procedure. Here's Brother Aaron. He's all dressed up. By the way, he's got a censer in his hand. We didn't mention that a while ago, but the censer of burning coals whenever he goes into the Holy of Holies every year at Yom Kippur. And so we're all dressed up. Got his sash, got his turban on, different kind of turban, got a breastplate, etc., etc., etc. So we are ready now for the ordination procedure. Got your clothes? Got you ready? Here's the description. Now let's move into this. Now, I hope you've read this and gone through all the dreary details, but here is how you set apart the priest, and particularly Aaron, the high priest. So the congregation assembled with the materials. You read that in verses 1 through 4. They pull together the clothes, they pull together the sacrifices, they pull together, they got all the stuff assembled. Then the priests were washed, which is kind of interesting because the word wash there is kind of corresponding to our New Testament washing or cleansing, which kind of just, you wonder, you don't want to put your foot down on it, but just like, this is kind of like baptism, isn't it? Yeah, kind of. So they were washed and they were clothed in holy garments. The tabernacle furnishings and priests were anointed. So Moses is going through, he has his whatever, hyssop, whatever. He's dipping the hyssop in there and he's sprinkling every article in the tabernacle. Okay. A purification offering was made. After all, you can't just not purify the tabernacle and the priest. Then the burnt offering was made. And then the ram was sacrificed for the ordination and blood was applied You're kidding me. To the ear, to the thumb, and the toe of the right side of the priest. The hands were filled with the wave offering. Blood and oil were sprinkled on the priests and their clothes. And then they had a 7-day rite of passage. They had to stay 7 days in the tabernacle. So, here's the big question. If you're age 55 and above, you're asking the big question. How do they use the bathroom? I don't know. I'm sure they found a way. So 7 days they've been in there. Wait a minute. What? Blood applied to the right earlobe, the right thumb, the right big toe. What is that about? Well, the short answer is don't know. There's a couple of speculations. First off, the priest made whatever I hear, whatever I touch and handle, wherever I go, I am your servant. I'm your child. Or it could be here, 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 top to bottom, I'm yours. So it's to please you. And so it's just, it's again, that's one of the things, that throws you off about Leviticus is like, you look at that and you say, that don't make no sense. But there you are. Okay. They were consecrated, and that's not a term that we are very familiar with. It was consecrated. Well, let's go first. The tabernacle and everything in it was sprinkled, anointed, thus consecrated. The altar utensils, consecrated. Aaron himself, consecrated. The altar with oil and blood was consecrated. See, we play around with these words, and it's kind of like, what does that mean? Consecrated is equivalent to saint or holy in the New Testament. In fact, if you look in the Septuagint, it's the same word, hagios, the saint, to be holy. And then anointed in the New Testament is often associated with the Spirit. So you have this priest who is set apart, set aside, made holy, and all of the surroundings of him. And then you have him anointed, equivalent to the Spirit. So again, you look at it and it's kind of like, I never realized that there was like this stuff in the Old Testament. It's like, yeah, we'll talk about that just a little bit more. So he is consecrated. 7 days later, I want you to notice the order. They have offering a sin offering, a burnt offering, and a fellowship offering. And you ought to be saying by now, that's what we studied in chapters 1 through 7, wasn't it? Absolutely. So you have the priest who must be offered the sin offering. We've got to take away our sin. Then the burnt offering as gratitude and holiness to God. And then a fellowship offering. We're okay with God now. We have fellowship with each other. You see the order there? It's lovely. And he says, this is going to happen because today Yahweh will appear to you. Oh, really? Yes. Yahweh is now, as he promised, going to dwell with his people. You guys be ready. Okay. So Aaron did his thing. He gets to work. He slaughters the calf as a sin offering. He slaughters the burnt offering. He offers his offering for the people. He slaughtered the ox and the ram as a fellowship offering for the people. This is the full circuit of chapters 1 through 7 that you just read about. And Aaron is going to work as a high priest, fulfilling his function and role in it. After he's done, Aaron lifts up his hands toward the people and bless them after offering, notice how we repeat this, the sin offering, the burnt offering, the fellowship offering. He steps down. It's done. And I just cannot help but wonder when Jesus is there with his disciples, as he is standing there just about to go back up into heaven, he lifts up his hands and he blesses them. And he's taken up to heaven. And And by the way, he is the high priest, Jesus is, about to enter the holy place for us. So we just have these reverberations throughout. So, Aaron's done. Any thoughts, questions, or comments? This is kind of like, ooh, heavy-duty stuff. Okay. Moses and Aaron come out. They bless the people. By the way, that number 6, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Oh, beautiful song, beautiful sentiment. Maybe that's what they were saying. Fire comes out from the presence of Yahweh, consumes the burnt offering, fat portions of the altar, and the people go, yes! And they fall down on their face. The Hebrew even suggests that this is a ringing cry. Yes! Yahweh has blessed us. Yahweh is here. Yahweh has agreed to live with us. This is fantastic. I know you're excited. This is cool stuff. God has come to live among his people. Orderly move again. Tabernacles are done. The offering has been explained. The priest has been clothed appropriately. The sacrifice is offered. And Yahweh comes to visit. Brilliant how orderly everything is. It's like, what does that have to do with us? And I want to take you to the life of 1,000 years later and more, to the life of a Roman centurion with whom you're very familiar, Cornelius. In Caesarea, there's a man named Cornelius, a centurion. This guy is the backbone of the Roman army. He's commander of 100 men. He is under authority. He knows how to give and take orders. He gets things done. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing, so he follows the procedures and the morals of the Jews. He's not a convert yet, but he's on the fringe. And his family. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. So what affects his lifestyle? What does he do? He gives. He prays. One day, about 3 in the afternoon, vision came, an angel came to him in a vision. Cornelius, what is it, Lord? He says in fear. You all remember this story, I know. The angel said, your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. Oh, I know about that now. Because you will remember the grain offering. You're to take a certain type of grain. You're to take a portion of it, put it on the altar, and it is a what? Yes, Bob. It is a memorial offering to Yahweh, where he remembers and knows what you have done. And there Cornelius, a Gentile Roman, his prayers and his offerings go up as a memorial before God. And I just have to ask, what does your prayers and offerings do as well? Is there any reason to believe that this is not the same for us? The alms we give, the prayers that we give, often equated to incense, by the way. Well, that's not all in Acts chapter 10.
Real quick, was he Jewish by ethnicity? Or was he Roman?
He was Roman.
By ethnicity.
Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Peter is going up on the roof to eat. Anybody need the TV? Okay, Peter has gone back up to the roof to eat. He is hungry. He's going to pray. And then you are familiar with this story. Peter is hungry. He has a vision. And a sheep comes down with all kinds of 4-footed animals and reptiles, yucky poo, and birds. And the Lord says, Peter, have at it, buddy. You're hungry. Kill and eat. I've never eaten junk like that. I person going to Crystal, Lord?
No, I like Crystal.
I like Crystal. I like White Castle. But anyway, all right. See, that's going out all over the world now. White Castle's going to sue me. Anyway, all kinds. There's like pigs in there, and hippopotamuses, and even possum. And where does Peter get this? Anything impure or unclean? Where does he get that? Well, you're not going to get it yet because you haven't been to Leviticus 11. That's where he gets it. Oh, excuse me, not 11, 16, whatever. Anyway, you haven't studied that yet. All kinds of stuff you're not supposed to eat. Where did he know? He knew it from Leviticus. Well, about the time Cornelius' men come knocking, and Peter gets the message. In Peter's message to Cornelius, he says, you know what has happened. You know about John the Baptist. You know how God anointed Jesus. Oh, wait a minute. Anointed. Now you know. Leviticus chapter 9, 10, 8, and 9. And he anointed him with what? The Holy Spirit. And so again, you have this rough equivalency of what's happening in the Old Testament, the New Testament. So, a memorial offering. Everything is clean. Yes, if you want to eat a possum, you can. And Jesus is anointed just like the high priest with the Holy Spirit. See how much richer flavor now you have because of that, because you've endured Leviticus? This is where this stuff comes from. The memorial offering, chapter 2. Clean and unclean, chapter 11. Anointing the priest, chapter 2. And I would suggest this to you, that Leviticus does not shout to us. It's foundational for our understanding of the New Testament in both its ritual, its concepts, its vocabulary. Once you get Leviticus, you start having a deeper insight into Romans, Galatians, and Hebrews especially. It's woven throughout. Any questions or comments? Chapter 10. When I read about these guys, it's like, I'm sorry, but it's kind of like the Dukes of Hazzard theme, just good old boys, never meaning no harm. It kind of goes through my head because Nadab and Abihu, they're kind of like, these were good guys. Now to us, they kind of like, Nadab and Abihu, woo, yes. Look at this. Aaron married Elisheba, you remember her, daughter of Aminadab and sister of Nashon, bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. So Aaron's got 4 sons. The next one is very intriguing. This is after the covenant on Sinai has been given. Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the elders of Israel went up and they had a fellowship meal before God. He was something, his feet was like something like a paper made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. These were powerfully influenced and connected guys to Yahweh himself. They ate with God. Have Aaron, your brother, brought to you from among the Israelites, along with his sons Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, so they may serve me as priests, God says. This is rich background. So, he brought out Aaron's son, put tunics on them. They are dressed, not ornately as Aaron, but they are. Aaron and the sons did everything commanded through Moses. And you see them very active in chapter 9 when they come out from their 7-day ordination period. Pretty good guys, huh? so. Are you ready? You know what's about to happen. Aaron's son, Nadab and Abihu, took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense. And they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, contrary to his command. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. And I thought you would appreciate this German woodcut from 1499. There's Nadab and Abihu, or Nadab and Abihu. They got their censers there. They're offering strange fires. I like this next one too. Same verse. Nadab and Abihu, 50 years later. I just think that's kind of cool. Okay. So what did they do? And why did they do it? And really, what's the... I mean, this is pretty harsh, you know. They offered unauthorized fire, contrary to the commands. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through this chapter 10 and kind of break this down. It wasn't authorized, it was contrary. Moses blurts out to Aaron, this is what Yahweh spoke of when he said, among those who approach me, I will be proved holy in the sight of all people, I'll be honored. So whatever they did wasn't very nice to God. Okay, so you got two corpses there, burned up. What are you going to do with them? High priest cannot defile himself. You can't touch anything dead. Eleazar and Ithamar are there with him. Called cousins. You carry your cousins outside the camp, away from the front of the sanctuary. So they came and carried them still in their tunics outside the camp as Moses ordered. I think it's significant that they're still in their tunics. They're still in their priestly garments. And we go outside the camp. Remember what we talked about last week, outside the camp? It's a place of not blessing, if not cursing. It's a place where the ashes of the animals were taken. It's a place where God's blessing was not. Take them outside the camp. This is significant. And it's significant because we always are reading about it. Yahweh said to Moses, tell Aaron to do this, do this, do this. No, sir, not this time. This is the only time in Leviticus you'll read this. Then Yahweh said to Aaron, okay, so the boys have been burned up. Aaron is sure, I'm sure he's there in shock. I'm sure that everybody's in shock. You and your sons are not to drink wine or other fermented drink whenever you come or go into the tent of meeting, or you will die. Wait a minute. We're offering strange fire, and we're not supposed to go into the tent of meeting when we've been drinking. This is going to be a lasting ordinance for generations to come, so you can distinguish between the holy and common, between the clean, unclean, and clean. So you can teach the Israelites. Your head has got to be clear. This is the Lord's stuff you're messing with. You cannot be befuddled and unclear. And I think that's maybe significant to this passage. So, Aaron is not to mourn. The Israelites can. The sin offering was not eaten contrary to directions. And Moses gets hacked. I didn't eat this. You were supposed to eat this. So this is kind of like an unauthorized thing too, you know? And Aaron says, we can fill in the blanks, but Aaron says, my boys just got killed. I can't mourn. I can't do the usual thingy, would it have really been right for me to eat, to feast on the sin offering? And Moses kind of like, no. So, even though you have a violation, you have a different attitude, it looks like. Now, one question that comes up is, God, how come so harsh? I mean, that's just, God, that's just really mean. Think with me just a second. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve bites the apple. And what's happened? Y'all are out of here. That was serious. Now you're going to die. Probably some spiritual implication in that, but certainly physical implication in that, and there are other implications to it as well. You walk through several instances like that. I'm trying to pull something out of my brain. I'll think about it at 11:30 tonight.
We talked about Ananias and Sapphira.
Yeah, we're going to move to Ananias and Sapphira. There's another Old Testament example where God deals with people pretty harshly. There's Achan, and there's what I want you to remember is that each time that something new happens, and there's a violation, it gets dealt with harshly. In Acts 5, you have Ananias and Sapphira. They lied, they flat out lied. But it's kind of like Peter, rather than him saying, look, we're going to sing all 8 verses of Just As I Am, and you're going to be up here in verse 2. Didn't happen. They were struck dead. And so he's like, you have to wonder, if they had been allowed to continue like this, would there have been other laxities? Well, you know, we offered that incense with strange fire at that time, and, you know, it was bad, but it didn't turn out to be. Or even Ananias and Sapphira. And again, Aaron goobers up, doesn't eat sacrifice, but Moses is satisfied. So you've got this attitudinal issue as well. Okay. Oh, by the way, why was Aaron not allowed to mourn? He's ordained. He's got the anointing on him. But you look at this too. If Aaron and his sons were allowed to mourn and do common thing, would the people have said, oh, poor Aaron, poor Eleazar, poor Ithamar, not to mention poor Nadab and Abihu, Yahweh's so mean. You guys stick to the knitting. You got things to do. So, okay. Any questions or comments so far? We're going to delve into Nadab and Abihu just a little bit more.
Harvey, I think it was probably just a reflex to keep the ark from turning over. Yet he was put to death. He didn't do it intentionally.
I'd have done the
Most
same
of
thing.
these you're talking about here, they were intentional in their actions.
It looks to be.
But Uzzah, he just did a reflex.
But they were
God said,
transporting the
don't
ark.
touch the ark.
Yeah, go ahead, that's right.
They weren't doing it in the proper procedure, right?
Yeah, they were transporting it in a way if they weren't supposed to be transporting it, they wouldn't have found
It
themselves in
wouldn't
that
have
situation.
happened if they had
So someone pointed out then that Uzzah died not because of his actions, because of David's actions. David should have known that. But, break it out. It's unauthorized. That is a stranger, alien, or layman as opposed to a priest, someone outside the family, that is, or also strange gods, that is foreign gods. So that all that gives you the flavor of that word. It was contrary to God's command. Moses said, this is what Yahweh spoke of. Then Yahweh says, you guys aren't going to be drinking whenever you come on the job. That's just no bueno. So that you may distinguish between holy and common, clean and unclean. I think those give you the flavor of what's going on. And so was it an error of judgment, drunkenness, direct disobedience, willing carelessness? It was not pleasing. In short, we don't know exactly what it was. There's some speculation. You know, Yahweh has come down and he has ignited the fire on the altar with all the burnt offerings on it. The fire for their censers should have come from the altar. They apparently took fire from something that they had kindled. Was it campfire? You know, they were there 7 days. I don't know. And God says, that's not the way you do it, guys. So, here's the bombshell we just dropped. Is this an adequate supporting argument for a cappella music only in worship? That is, the altering of God's worship by adding something he did not specifically authorize, which in our theology and framework we would say instrumental music. And so I don't want us to argue or to talk about whether it's right or wrong to have instrumental music in worship. But exegetically, is this a supporting argument for not using instrumental music in worship? Now, I might add that this was worship that was authorized by God in Leviticus 10. And so, any aberration from that, deviance from that, was met and punished. And so, again, the question becomes: is this really applicable to what we do today? And you know, it depends on who you ask.
Harvey,
yeah.
Without getting into that specific argument on the screen, my question would be: is there anything that says do not do this? I mean, what I'm saying is, the fire was, there was a specific command. You use this fire.
Well, fire is fire, Jody. It was accomplished the same purpose, right?
Well, but the point is, they were to use this fire and they didn't use that fire. Your argument on the screen is, are we ever told to or not to? We have examples of, in the Old Testament, this is how they did it in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, there's not an example of yay or nay. So that's a very loose argument to tie back to the fire issue, in my mind.
Okay. And so I will leave you with that. Next week, March 12th. You are going to love these chapters.
Oh, yeah. I read them this week.
I'm telling you, when I was studying and reading through Leviticus, it's like when I got to this, it's like this took me days to get through. It's like, thank you. It's not that you can't read it fast. It's kind of like when you try to understand it, it's like, wait a minute, if there's a white hair in this red sword, you want me to do what? But if it's, and then also, well, if you get mold and mildew in your house, you call the priest and he says, okay, well just tear out those 3 or 4 concrete blocks and your mind just goes, oh. So we're going to try, and discharges. Oh man. Okay.
Fun this week.
So I would challenge you to go ahead and read chapters 11 through 15. And this is the dietary. This is where you can eat this kind of critter, but can you eat that kind of critter? What Peter undoubtedly had in mind when he saw that sheep let down from heaven. With that, I thank you and wish you well and blessings this week.
Cool.